There are no such things as limits or obstacles, only opportunities. Step into the greatest version of yourself because what you do matters. Shift your narrative. You're listening to Opportunity Makers, where entrepreneurs come to take their purpose-driven business to the next level. Here's your host, Jim Padilla.
Sachin, so good to have you here, man. Long time coming. I've been trying to coordinate this interview for months and months between our schedules, and I was very much looking forward to getting the opportunity to reconnect after all the good things we were able to do together, working with your company. So, why don't you just say hey to the audience and give them a little bit of your story in your words, and how you got here.
Sure. Well, hello to you, Jim, again, and thanks for hosting me, and thank you to the entire team for helping us and our business grow and learn so much in the process. No better time than now. So I'm grateful that the can got kicked, so to speak, to this very moment, because I know we're both smarter, sharper, wiser as every minute passes. So great conversation, I'm sure, is to be had. A little bit about me, just so people understand my background. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm not done growing, not done expanding, but I'll share where I've come from and where things are heading at this point in my life. So I'm originally trained as a chiropractor, and as chiropractors, our philosophy is always that the body has its own capacity, capability, and innate intelligence to heal itself. And one of the things that we as chiropractors can help people with is helping their physical body move better. But one day, about 2 years into practice, I got a CD, or actually about 4 years into practice, I got a CD as I was walking out of my first associateship. And that CD was a spoken presentation by a gentleman named James Chestnut. And what James talked about was how chiropractic is so much more. And that expanded, kind of my paradigm of what chiropractic was. And around the same time, I was, on the news. And as a result of that news article, we had all these people call our office, all of whom were very sick, and all of whom I didn't really have a solution for because I was working as a sports-based chiropractor. So that kind of started my journey, this CD of learning how to become a better communicator, expanding what my scope of practice looks like, and then also not being able to help people. There's something gutting, and maybe this happens to you, Jim, when you get on a sales call, if you will, or a service call, and you can't help someone, right? It's like, man, I don't know what to do. I know you're in pain. I don't know what to do, and I can't help you. And the right thing to do is, you can't take them on as a client because you can't help them, but when you don't know where to send them, it really feels uncomfortable. So that was me, patient after patient after patient, after this news story ran. And then I'm like, why are these people coming in? It makes no sense. And it turns out that is because I had to become someone else. And that's when I really got deep into the functional medicine world. And functional medicine, for those that don't know, is root cause personalized medicine, the way healthcare should be, in my opinion. So I started practicing that. Then I started a second practice from Cincinnati to Toronto, Canada. And colleagues of mine started kind of paying attention to what I was doing and wanted me to help them. So I started coaching them in addition to running our practice. And about 4 years ago, I discovered breathwork. And that's become a big part of what I do now. So I do a lot of keynotes now on breathing and breathwork. And I deliver breathwork experiences in addition to my functional medicine business coaching practice and clinical practice as well. So those are the kind of three areas that I play in, and all of them are connected by the general theme of empowering people to be their independent practitioners, business owners, and entrepreneurs, but also independent of the healthcare system by being their own best doctors. So all of it is interconnected in one way, shape, or form. And so that's a little bit about me. And I'm a father and a husband. I think those are important to mention as well.
Yeah, all of good stuff. I find that the most effective means of mentorship comes from people who have figured something out and then go back to help other people with what they've learned. And there's this big trend of people who are like, I want to be a coach, and then they're trying to figure out what they want to coach on. Or I think it can work. I think that's a much longer path to success and maybe not the ideal method. But your story, your path has really elucidated that. Like you illuminated that piece. Is what you have figured out, you've then gone back and taught.
I feel like that's the best way to really learn something, is to teach it to others. So In some ways, I even jokingly tell my students this: listen, I'm doing this for me is just as much as I'm doing it for you, because I can master a topic if I'm forced, in a sense, to teach it to others, or others are relying on me to simplify what I'm learning and convey it in a way that they can digest it.
Yeah. Another way I frame that exact thing is putting yourself in a position that demands that you produce. When you know other people are waiting to feed on what you're learning, then you have to learn it in a certain way
Right.
that allows you to pass it through and become that conduit. So that's great. And like I said, you've been a great example. That Cindy and I were just talking a minute ago about you. And, I was like, well, anything you want me to share with that Sachin when I see him? And she went on for like 5 minutes, and she's just like, she's just been, we still follow and we still connect. And she's like, it's just so awesome to watch you just growing in what seems to be a very natural and authentic way. You're just growing in everything you're doing. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's who he is. That's the vision. That's the mission. And, you're getting on bigger stages. You're sharing much more powerful message. Your YouTube presence, your social media, everything's growing, but you're not removing yourself. You're just strategically placing yourself differently, but you're still very much connected to it.
Yeah,
And
there's as you're saying that, I feel like there's something I can share that might add some value. And I learned this from Naval Ravikant, who you may be familiar with. And a book has been written about him and his tweets and his philosophies, and it's called the Navalmanac. And so it's a book about him, written by his content by somebody else. It's kind of a weird book. It's not quite a biography either. So in that book, they mentioned 4 levers that Naval talks about. The first one is people. And these are short. People are short levers, right? And they come with personalities. They come with challenges. It comes with ups and downs and emotions. I mean, there's so much attached to people, right? And people are amazing, and they're a lever, but they're a short lever. The second lever is other people's money, right? So you could leverage investors or investments and cash and invest it back into your business. And that's another lever. It's a slightly longer lever than people, right? There's just no emotion involved. It's just money. Right. The third and fourth lever are the 2 most important. And the third one is media. And media is essentially how do you can and clone yourself and repurpose what you've created so that you can have a team of people clean up behind you, if you will, right? So my job is to focus as the visionary and steer the boat in a certain direction. And then I want to try to build and assemble, and I'm still doing this, the right team around me so that they can, I don't have to do anything. They can take what I'm already creating and repurpose that material and content. So as an example, and I'll give a short example, then move on to the fourth lever. But the example I would say is I just gave a keynote on breathing and breath work at a dental conference. And my team sent to me on Monday, my social media guys, like, we need more reels. We need more reels. We need more reels. I'm like, no, we don't need more reels. You need to watch the video I just recorded of myself giving that keynote, and you need to pull out 20 to 30 clips out of it. Right. I should not have, there should be no reason for me to create another, selfie video of myself ever again. I have enough, speaking from stage engagements. I have, tons of those. I have 2-3 hours of content I record every week for my mentorship program. I'm like, there should be no reason, right? So how do you can and clone yourself? That's another lever. And then once you do that, you can do it into perpetuity. So when I went to this dental conference, I put together a breathwork bundle, and I just simply shared my 5 best resources with them. So now I captured, these people's contact information so I could deliver them additional value. So that, that canning and cloning yourself through media is a very long lever. And then the fourth lever is intellectual property, or code. He refers to it as code. And what he's mainly referred to is as software. But for those of us that are in the service industries, it's your intellectual property, right? What is it that you do that's unique? How can you put it into an automated media-driven process so that you can and clone yourself, and you have a process that nobody else can replicate because you own the system that creates the outcome. So those last 2 levers are crucial, apply to both technology-based companies like software companies, but can also apply to service-based companies if that's the industry that we're in. I think that's like kind of relevant to our conversation because of how we structure our businesses and optimize them to sell at different levels, high ticket group programs, let's say, and then do it yourself or, one to infinity type programs.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, that's a journey that Cindy and I have been on as well. And we're in the same boat. We were just having this conversation the other day. I have, almost 300, almost 400 videos on YouTube. We do 2 hours worth of training, teaching a week, plus interview. I'm doing, 200 podcast interviews a year. I don't need to create any video for the sake of the video anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now it's just a matter of strategic repurposing and using it in ways that are valuable and leverage. And I watched some of these videos that I did 9 years ago that I'm still saying the same thing now.
Mm-hmm.
The video production might be a little bit off because it was 9 years ago in my dining room or something. But, it's like if you're still sharing the same message, then there's some realness in it. There's some truth. It's because it's what you believe, because you're not changing it to fit the marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have been an example of that as well. It's like your beliefs are your beliefs, and you share what now you're just maybe more refined in how you're sharing, or the video production quality might be better, but the message is the same.
Yeah, sometimes I'll tell you what, I was watching some YouTube videos this morning, and I like to watch vintage Steve Jobs interviews where the video quality is like so crap.
Right.
But you're just happy that somebody captured this moment or this nugget of wisdom or this knowledge. And it almost makes it more attractive because it's like, man, I couldn't be in that room. And there was like absolutely no way it could have been in that room. But I'm so glad somebody recorded this because the information is so valuable. And I know that, both you and I try to share timeless wisdom. And, so we're not constantly reinventing our message. We might reinvent the way we say it, but the theme and the values are still the same because they're timeless principles that we live by.
Definitely. And, I don't know that that's been intentional for me. It's just something now looking back, I realize that's been the history. That's been the evolution. I watched some of the videos and I'm like, God, I had no idea what I was doing. It was just me alone with the camera in the dining room, and the lighting was awful. And, I started the recording, and then I walked into the place, and then I walked, like this classical clown car kind of stuff. But I'm like, that's really good content though. It was exactly same thing I say today. I just say it smarter, maybe a better production.
Right.
But one of the things that you've always been by is like, I would love for you to share just, what's the mission and what's the vision that you're leaning into and accelerating towards?
Yeah, I love this question, and here's what I can tell you, Jim. You're probably the first person I'm sharing this with because it's something that's truly been evolving over the last little while, and I don't know if it's because of the planetary alignment that's been shifting. I know there's a bunch of people that I've been talking to. Really high functioning, high level, what most people would consider successful entrepreneurs are starting to question, like, maybe they're going through midlife crises or midlife business crises. If they've made good amounts of money and they're trying to figure out how, like, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? Right. And there's just something that's swirling in the ethos, and I can't quite put my finger on it, and neither can they, but there's this generalized theme that I'm hearing over and over again. And it's not that they're scared, but they're just unsure of what they want to put their thumb down on. And so I'm going through a little bit of that right now. My overarching theme in life is simplicity. My overarching theme in healthcare and in business is how do I make this simpler? How do I make it more elegant? And how do I let, kind of nature, our bodies, certain timeless processes take care of the sophistication of solving the actual problem? So where that journey has led me in healthcare is to the breath. The breath is actually the one thing that we have conscious control over that then regulates everything else in our body. So the steering wheel of our nervous system is our breath, and the steering wheel of our life is our nervous system. And so imagine having a supercar and buying that car and it comes without a steering wheel, right? You have all this power, but you don't know how to control it or what to do with it. And so that's what
That'd be
unconscious. Yeah. And that's essentially what unconscious breathing is like, right? The equivalent of a supercar without a steering wheel. And so what I'm realizing is that it ties to virtually every chronic illness. I just gave an interview today about how it ties to infertility. I gave a talk this past weekend about how we breathe ties to dental health. I gave a talk previous to that about how it ties to entrepreneurship and focus and attention deficit disorder. I'm giving a keynote to financial advisors so they can become better, and more grounded and develop themselves personally and spiritually. So there's so many things that breath can do for us. So that kind of checks off all the boxes for me. It's super simple. It can be extremely disruptive without having to invent or create or even ship anything, right? You already have your lungs. I just got to teach you how to use them. Right. So breathing actually breaks all of the models of value. So if you think about Alex Hormozy's equation, he talks about the value equation. The value equation is a problem worth solving. Okay. And I can tie breathing back to virtually any chronic disease and illness, scientifically backed and validated. Next is the perceived likelihood of achieving an outcome. I can teach people how to breathe within literally minutes, prove to them that their breath can change how they feel. So I can unequivocally, in a short period of time, prove that to them. And I have plenty of case studies as well. And so that's the denominator or the numerator. The denominator we want to make small, which is the first thing is time delay, right? How long is it going to take for me to feel good? I can show you how to feel better within minutes. So I don't even have to ship you anything. I don't have to wait days or weeks, hours, nothing. And then the perceived sacrifice. You're already breathing. I'm just going to show you how to breathe with awareness and teach you specific techniques that you can use in specific moments when you need them. So you essentially take the denominator down to zero, right? And value goes to infinity. So from a business model perspective, if I'm trying to figure out how to crack this nut right now so that I can deliver extraordinary levels of value to people, I can scale it worldwide. I can get clinical outcomes without having to be a clinician. I can teach it to hundreds, if not thousands of people, millions of people. And I belong to companies who are trying to do that right now as an advisor and key contributor. So that's the nut that I'm trying to crack right now. The interesting thing about breathing is that it's the most important thing that we pay attention to when a person is born, and the most important thing we pay attention to when somebody is, transitioning to the afterlife. And then there's really no attention given to it in the Western world anytime in between that. Right. And so we're trying to create more awareness around that because it can literally be the softest yet most disruptive thing in healthcare.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it's my focus, the number one rule inside of Gain the Edge when you walk through the gateway is it's not what you're saying, it's who you're being while you're saying it that matters. And that applies everywhere, whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying, it's about who you're being while you're saying it. What's the intention? What's the state of the heart as you're moving and saying or doing these things? It's not about the words or the actions. And as you're talking through this, I'm like, that's really the product that we sell. It's like sales and sales teams and events and all that stuff. That's all secondary, because at the end of the day, it's who you're being that is going to make all of this effective or clear or not. And this is the first time I even thought about it in this term, especially in terms of the Hormozy formula, because we talk about it every day around here. That's the one thing that we can deliver immediately as a state of being. Mm-hmm. I can't deliver you sales outcomes today, but I can deliver you a new state of being today.
Right.
Right. So using that, I never thought of it in that perspective, but I like that because that's, the same thing. You have a whole business model, which I want to, unpack a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's the needle mover. But there's a whole other way for you to package the business so it can be delivered so that there's a tangible outcome and all of that, which I'd love to have you unpack more. But that I've never even thought about it. And I remember reading the book Breathe, at your recommendation. And ever since then, it's been something that I'm supremely aware of now. I breathe intentionally through my nose now more in ways than I've never even knew that it was a thing, 5 years ago.
I absolutely love that. I'll tell you a really fascinating story because the truth is you can say things and you just really never know who's gonna take you up on, taking that next step. And I'm so grateful that you shared that you're reading that book. And if I had any positive influence in directing you that way, I'm so grateful that James wrote that book. It's the number one book I purchased for my clients when it came out. I bought it for every one of my clients because it is something that's so valuable and important, and it applies to virtually every single area of our life. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's impactful. We do. We don't often know when we're sending a message. It's usually downrange, so to speak, at a very specific person, but we never know how many people are just off the side watching, witnessing, or listening.
Right.
And we
I
impact a
love
lot
that.
of people. So you're an example of that in many ways. So let's transition this a little bit to what you're actively doing now. Everything that I'm seeing from your marketing and Facebook ads and different things is you're really leaning into marketing and messaging for doctors and practitioners. So why that as a message, and what's happening there for you?
Yeah, so we're actually there's just for everyone's reference, there's two companies that we run. One is called Living Proof Institute, which is our clinical arm, and then we have a model that we've created, an intellectual property that we've created called our Living Light Metabolic Reset. And what we do is we teach other practitioners in our business coaching model called Perfect Practice how to implement this program. And we've created it so they can white label it and make it their own, add their own 20%, right? We have them 80-20 the program, so it's their own. And we then allow them to use our frameworks and our templates. So what I'm actually doing, I'm spending this coming quarter taking about 10 practices through a done for you program. One of the things that we've been doing, we've taken about 200 and so people, thanks to you guys as well. We've taken several hundred people through our accelerator program, which over the course of 12 weeks, we teach people step by step how to create their own business. And what I realized through that process, Jim, and maybe you've seen this happen as well, is that you could give it to people on a silver platter, but the deal breaker at the end of the day is if they're going to do it or not. And not even if they're capable of doing it, because I know everyone that we work with is capable of doing it, but if they actually think they're capable of doing it, right? Yeah. Just like what we think of ourselves actually determines more than anything else what projects we even tackle, right? And at what point we give up. So we realize that a lot of people are passionate about health, but not really passionate about serving people, but not super passionate about building out funnels. And I get that. But they also may not be in a position where they could pay somebody $30,000 to do it, right? And build it out for them. So they're kind of in a catch-22. So we thought that medium ground would be, let us show you how to do it at the click of a button. And it still wasn't enough for some people. So what we're experimenting with right now is what that would look like for our team to do it for somebody, because what takes them 12 weeks, we could do for them in probably 12 days. Right. So my goal is to get it down to 12 days or less to be able to turn this over for somebody. And so they have a turnkey solution for their business that they can plug in. Again, going back to the Hormozy equation, right? Get rid of the sacrifice, which is them slogging through it, and reduce the amount of time, and the value goes up, in this case, exponentially, in my opinion. So that's what I'm working on, is just to try to crack that nut for our practitioners. And that way they can roll these things out sooner. I'm reading Alex Hormozy's book, $100 Million Leads, as you probably are, I'm sure. And then I'm also reading another book. It's actually a reading assignment that we've given our clients called Sell Like Crazy by Sabri Subi. Yep. And he's a guy out of Australia. I've never met him, but I kind of like his style. And I like what he says. It's a lot of what we've been teaching our clients, but he approaches it with a little bit more punch and not as conservative as sometimes practitioners tend to be, because they're afraid to ruffle feathers, and he's not. So he really tries to help you write a more punchy message. And I've started applying some of those teachings, and I'm pretty punchy as it is, and I can go on the edge a little bit, but just leading into that a little bit more, I found has been helpful for me, but also other practitioners in getting that message out there. So these are some of the projects that I'm working on, some of the influences that are happening for me right now. And we're trying to build a team and just figure out, what do I want to do for the next 5 years? I know I had a good run here with these last 3 years, and I realized that if I want to make more money, I know how to do that, right? So I can always go back to what I was doing. What I want to figure out now is, how do I have the greatest amount of impact with the least amount of resistance? And so that's what I'm trying to. That's the next kind of thing that I'm chasing in my practice and trying to crack in my business.
Yeah, as you were talking, that's what I had written down was scaling impact. Like that's, with a lot of the people we work with at, at your level and beyond, it's a similar story. Everybody figured out how to make money. Mm-hmm. Now it's how do we scale impact without having to break things,
right?
Including yourself, and
especially yourself,
right? And it's interesting because as you were talking about, Subi's perspective, kind of a Grant Cardone type vibe. It's much more energetic. It's not necessarily tactical. It's a lot of the same things that you or I teach, mm-hmm. but it's definitely with a greater edge. And, it's kind of what we do with you. Like we work with a lot of very spiritual entrepreneurs, people who are leading from the heart. And when we bring our teams in, we want to match the brand. We want to match the values. We want to match the audience. But we often try to also polarize that a bit, because I find that if you lean into people who are spiritual with spirituality, then you just put more air in the balloon. Mm-hmm. And instead, sometimes a balloon needs a rock to be grounded with. And so sometimes we'll take the opposite energy and give them some straight, direct truth. So they're like, oh my gosh, I need that. And then they connect to it, as opposed to trying to take them, around the planet a couple of times before you land.
I went through this really interesting exercise, and I feel like, certainly I feel like you would benefit from it, Jim. If you haven't done it already, it sounds like you may have, just based on what you said. But I have a friend she's recently become a friend through this process. Her name is Robin McKay. And she took me through a special type of form that I fill out. It's a psychological form. It's called the NEO, N-E-O. And don't ask me what it stands for, but it basically reads my personality. Because there came a point in my business where I started attracting a lot of people who are the opposite personality as me. And I'm very grounded. I'm very calm. Like my neuroticism is like 0. I don't really think I have a big ego, and I work consciously at kind of dissolving it. I try to carry a lot of humility, and maybe even saying that doesn't make me humble. I don't know, but these are the principles that I try to live by. And I started attracting people that just had a lot of chaos in their lives, that had a lot of anxiety, that that basically had the opposite operating system. And I'm just kind of like, man, what is going on here? And so I did this personality testing, and I'm 2 standard deviations away from normal in certain personality traits. And it turns out that you actually attract the opposite. Right. So I didn't have this awareness, and I was just kind of scratching my head, because we always say, oh, like attracts like, and, you're going to attract the people who are the way you show up. And it turns out the paradox is, unless you're very polarizing, either unconsciously really good at something, or you have something that other people desire, maybe you don't even realize how valuable that is to somebody else, you're going to attract that opposite person. So I found that to be a really interesting paradox. I don't know if you've come up against that or not.
Yeah. And I think that it has become, Cindy and I in our marriage, we're very much that example of that, because we complement each other very well. All of my strengths she has some of them. There are some crossover, of course, but largely I'm strong at the things I'm strong at. She's strong at the things she's strong at. And together we make a really great pairing as a result. And we rub off on each other. But I find that in our team and our community as well. At the end of the day, it comes first and foremost, everybody has to be the best version of who they are. And then from there, how do those talents and traits and characteristics and beliefs match up so that you can have a tapestry that's just really tightly woven together, and a great match of everybody's beliefs? Because I have people on our team that, don't believe what I believe. They believe in the end goal, but they go about it differently. And thank God they do, because it's not how I would go about it. And it just gives us this really strong blend of a woven fabric that becomes, the more tight it gets, the less porous it becomes.
Right.
So yeah, I'm off to check that out, that NEO, see what this Robin McKay has got to check out there. So, as we start wrapping up here, how are you leading in? How are you, think the right way to ask this, but how are you pulling in the intangible, like the breathing? And maybe to you, it's just that is not intangible. It is tangible now, but it's more of it's not a measured factor. They can't say, oh, I got X ROI off my breathing, but it's a main vessel for how you deliver everything else you do. So how would you define that or describe that in your practice?
Help me out here, Jim. Maybe ask the question slightly differently.
Okay.
I might be missing it.
How does the breath work as the leading edge of what you're doing right now become the primary muscle that the rest of the practice and the thing your clients are building, what they're building on?
Yeah, it's definitely something we incorporate into what we do already. I think that there's two opportunities here that I can see. One is that breath could be the lead-in, right? I think right now a lot of programs focus on diet as the lead-in, right? So it's just like, oh, I got a better diet than you, right? Or you got to do this diet or that diet. We've heard it all a million times. Here's a fun fact. You consume about 2 to 3 pounds of food a day, depending on, how much somebody consumes, but you consume 30 pounds of air a day. So you actually consume more air than anything else in your entire life. But nobody talks about that, right? And I tell people, listen, if you want to feel better, in a few minutes, you change how you breathe. If you want to feel better in a few days or weeks, you change what you eat, right? And we all know that you can't go more than 5-6 minutes, most people, and without breathing. You can go days or weeks without eating, right? You can go days without hydrating yourself. So breathing is actually the most important thing we do that nobody's talked about. And what's so beautiful about it is that there's nothing to sell you, right? I mean, I got to teach you. So I got to sell you my time and my knowledge and however I package that up. But once you learn it, it's like driving school, right? Once you go to driving school, you don't have to keep going. And no matter what state of health you're in, your breathing will improve it, right? I had a lady, I went to the Porsche design store in Las Vegas. I was speaking there. I went there afterwards. And I just started talking. They were curious about why I was in town. I started telling them about breathing. And I got a message from the lady just the other day on Instagram. So they searched me out and found me to get in contact with me because she hurt her leg a few days later, was in excruciating pain. And she remembered what I told her about breathing and was able to get herself, calm enough and, out of pain enough that she could drive herself to the ER. Right? I don't recommend people doing that. And I didn't recommend that she did that either, but she told me afterwards that it was a breathing that got her able to do that. So there was no other time in my life, like if I was selling her a supplement or if I was selling her, anything else, it would have been days of in between time for her to be able to even apply it. Right. So here she is, kind of a stranger, if you will, seeking me out, finding me online, telling me how excited she was because of this. So we're trying to figure that out, like exactly how to do this. So for practitioners, it's for patients rather, it's leading with breath as the lead magnet, because that's unique. It's different. It's a blue ocean. My experience as a clinician, I think adds to that, right? There's a lot of breathwork facilitators who don't have the medical background that I do. So I think that really helps in creating credibility for the message. And then for practitioners are even more fascinated by this than the lay public, because once you start getting into the physiology and the biochemistry of breathing, as a clinician, it totally blows you away. So I'm already having people asking me, when are you going to do some teaching? When are you going to teach a course? When are you going to do this for us? And I belong to another program that does that certifies breathing facilitators. So there may be some opportunities there for me to start, teaching and offering this to clinicians, because again, it's a blue ocean. There's really very few that I know of, if any, programs that teach clinicians about breathing.
Right. So what do you want to be known for? Somebody says Sachin Patel. What do you want the first thing to come up in their mind?
I think, if I give it I don't want to give it much thought. I just want to say what comes kind of reflectively to me. I would say humility.
Yeah, but it's definitely all in the mix, because you are that. You've always been a very stable presence and a good force for good, but you've always been, I would say, if not the right word, but it's a descriptor, is understated.
Thank you.
You know, I've often described people as the kind of people who put things on your plate, or the kind of person who clears the plate all the time. And you're definitely somebody who leaves stuff on the plate. You know, you're not trying to grab yours. You're trying to make sure that there's something in it for everyone. And that's the kind of leader you want to be attached to, regardless of the product or the service.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Nature has a lot of great lessons to offer us. And it's such that the tree never takes more than it needs, right? And if it takes more than it needs, it actually harms itself. So I feel like there's, when we all we always want to get paid what we're worth. I mean, don't get me wrong. And we want to make sure that we're attracting the right type of client that values what we're offering and is going to implement what we're sharing and offering to them. But at the same time, there's only so much that money can do for you, right? And for me, what really drives me is impact. How can I, yes, I want to create generational wealth. Yes, I believe I deserve that. And yes, I believe the correlation between the impact I'm going to have is going to be, in direct proportion to that. So I'm okay with that. But for me, it's like now what drives me is the impact, right? Once you solve kind of the money problem, if you will, and you figure that out, okay, I can always go back to doing that if I want to. I know how to do that, and I can always lean into that direction if I need to. But then you can, if the money problem is solved for you, then you can take more leaps of faith for the things that you really believe in, the long shots, right? The maybe not so safe bets. And so I feel like I'm a little bit closer to that stage where I can take a very calculated bet and a leap of faith, and the universe is kind of reflecting back to me that this is the right direction for me to go in. And so the stages I'm getting invited to, the opportunities that are opening up for me, it just it's taking me to some pretty amazing places that other things I've been doing up to this point in my life probably wouldn't have taken me there.
So are you casting a wider net now, so it's not specifically in the practitioner space, or it's branching out, or are you still staying focused in that lane?
Well, I still want to help practitioners because I feel like, they need to be doing more of what we're doing, right? So I believe that helping practitioners is a way for us to, kind of multiply what we know, right? And I don't want this movement to end with me, right? It's also part of our legacy to try to teach as many practitioners as we can, because we believe that this is the way forward, right? Where, I firmly believe that the current solution to our healthcare crisis isn't more hospitals. It isn't even more health coaches or functional medicine practitioners. It isn't more supplements. It's actually more healthy people. Right. And I don't want people to wait until they're 50, 60, 70 years old, get some sort of disease, and then we've got to teach them how to be healthy because they live 50 years this way. And what if they had known from the very beginning how to be healthy, right? That's how we can actually change instantly, right? The instant shift that we can create in healthcare comes from empowering people, not inventing new stuff or building new buildings and making empty promises. It's teaching people that they already have superhuman capabilities that nobody's taught them how to tap into. And to me, that's the most disruptive thing because I don't have to sell you anything, Jim. You've already got an amazing billion-dollar body that if even one cell from your body was found in outer space, it would be the greatest discovery of mankind. But why is it that when it's right here, right now, we take it for granted, right? So we are the highest form of intelligence in the entire cosmos. And you're essentially a coordinated function of trillions upon trillions of cells doing a septillion things at any given moment. And we just want to teach you how to use it.
Yeah, I remember the first time we spoke about this years ago when we were first working together, and your statement was that the future doctor is yourself. Or
Yeah,
if I didn't say it that word that way, but that was the intent. It was the future is you heal thyself.
Yeah, the doctor of the future is the patient.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly how it was. But that was what I got. It's like you are the capable. If you understand it, then you heal thyself, right? The body takes care of itself if you're doing the right things within, putting it in the right environments, and taking the right steps, which is very encouraging. That's empowering. It's
Absolutely.
You definitely have some built-in enemies with the statements like that, but in the medical establishment and all of that. But it's very empowering especially in a place where, in an audience of people who are committed and on mission to bringing healing to the world.
Yeah, here's one thing I'll share if we have a few minutes. I know.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
Go for it.
Yeah. So, we grew up in a society where we learned something called Euclidean math. And in Euclidean math, there's only one right answer, right? And when there's only one right answer for any given problem, that's what causes war. That's what causes indifferences. That's what causes egos, right? Because, for me to be better than you, you've got to be worse than me, and vice versa. And so this Euclidean mathematical model actually is not the way the universe works. The universe actually works on a fractal mathematical model. And in a fractal mathematical model, any given problem has actually infinite solutions to it. So what that allows for is for ideas and thoughts and solutions to coexist. And so, this is why acupuncture can work. This is why chiropractic can work. This is why reflexology can work. This is why drugs can work, because there's actually an infinite number of solutions to solve the problem. I mean, it'd be kind of lame if your body only had one way to fix a problem, right? What would be really cool is if there were a million ways to fix any given problem in your body. That's what would make it really awesome. And that's what we are, is really awesome. So our philosophy is that we're just doing something different than what the current medical system is doing. And there will always be a place. People will get into accidents. People will have, heart attacks. People will get, diseases that are going to require medical attention. But there's a long gap between when somebody's healthy and when they require that. And there's a lot of damage and things that have to go wrong for an extended period of time for people to get that way. And there's nothing that the medical system can offer you that will actually make you healthier, right? So for example, if somebody's on 5 medications, and I asked that person, if I gave those 5 medications to your perfectly healthy son, what do you think would happen to him? They'd be like, well, he'd probably get sicker. I'm like, well, that's as healthy as you can be, as a healthy person on these medications. You can't get any healthier than that. And then they start scratching their head, right? So we give people an opportunity to make an educated and informed decision, and let them know that there's all kinds of different options that they have, and they can all coexist. And, I'm happy that we have a medical system that does what it does. And hopefully at some point they'll be happy that there's people like me that are doing what we do to reduce the burden on the system as well.
Yeah, this is such a good conversation. I love it. I'll end it with this piece, but I would call this a Pat Benatar focus. For those who are old enough to remember Pat Benatar, rocker chick in the 80s, and I was a big fan. And she was, pretty hardcore rock. And then she made her millions and got her all of her followers. And then all of a sudden she went into blues, and she lost a bunch of her followers, but she already had all the money she wanted. And now she just wanted to do what she felt she was called to do and deliver the music the way that she wanted to. And I see so many successful entrepreneurs on a similar journey. It's like, we've got the business part figured out. Now let's start really leaning into, who am I called to be? And how am I called to really change lives and change the world? And it's interesting because even though we're in a sales training, feels like moderately a transactional environment, everything we focus on is to bring people restored back to whole. It's like, you can't sell, you can't come up as the expert, you can't show up as the person who can change lives unless you're fixing some things in yourself before we can fix some things in your business that then get materialized through your business. But at the end of the day, we're all healing people, restoring people back to whole, just using a lot of different methods to do it, and whenever possible, collaborating together to bring these solutions. And that's what I love with this. With podcasts is one way for us to collaborate and bring what you're doing and your message to our audience who otherwise would not hear it. And so it's really cool to be a part of a vehicle that's doing all of that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for creating the stage and the opportunity and the time.
Definitely. So how can people get a hold of you, and where do you want to send them? What do you have for them?
Oh man, what do you think would be a good resource for them? Something health related?
I do. I think, obviously they can learn, marketing, messaging, et cetera, and business from you. You're a business rock star as well. But let's lean into the health component of this. How can we do something that you're the only one in my circle who's doing this, so let's make sure we get you to stand out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 2 resources that I like to share. One is called 30 in 30, and it's 30in30.org. And it's 35 best tips. So if you ever came to see me as a patient, these are the 30 things that I would tell you if you didn't already know and you weren't already doing. And this keeps 80% of people out of our practice. The other tool is breathworkwithsachin.com. And this is where I share my ultimate breathing bundle. And what I'm going to share there is 5 key resources, a stop snoring guide. So I'll show you how to stop snoring in 7 days if that affects you or someone that you love. I'll show you and teach you about breathing signatures, how to use your breath to change your emotions. I'll share with you a masterclass that I did for my patients on breathing, so you can start practicing that as well. I'll share a resource that I have where I went to James Nestor's retreat and I actually took all the notes from the retreat, and I'll share those with you. And I have a very special 90-minute breathwork recording where I take you through a guided musical journey with breath to get into altered states of consciousness and go through a beautiful guided meditation. So I'll share all that in the Ultimate Breath Bundle at breathworkwithsachin.com.
Perfect. So we'll have those in the show notes as well, so you can get access to them. And I recommend that you do, guys. Just check it out. Even for the, I know most of our audience is open to this conversation, if not already in it on some degree. And if you're not, just start moving this direction. This is about humanity. At the end of the day, we're all, business is just a transaction. It's just a vehicle. And inside the vehicle is where transformation happens if it's done right. So this is part of the process. I vouch for Sachin and everything he does. So trust me, if nothing else, and if he hasn't made that impression upon you in this last hour. So make sure that you tell him we sent you and tell me how it goes. I want to see what kind of transformations and what new ahas and what ways you see yourself living into your future differently now that you have some new knowledge. And the great part about this is once you learn something, you can't ever unlearn it. You can bury it and you can deny it, but it's in there now. So let's start getting you moving that direction. Sachin, it's been a pleasure, man. I love having you on. Love you. Appreciate you. And you guys, thanks as always for being here. We know you could be any place else on the planet. You chose to be here. Thanks for trusting us to be part of your success team. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe in all the areas that you can, and share us with whoever needs to hear this message. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Opportunity Makers. Head on over to gaintheedgenow.com to connect with Jim and his team. And remember, there's no such thing as limits or obstacles, only opportunities.